Okay, let's take a look at another past WASSCE question. So it says, simplify this term. 2 square root of 6 minus the square root of 3, all raised to the second power, or we can say all squared. Okay, so before we do this one together, I want you to pause the video and do the question yourself, and then we can come back and look at how we can get the answer together. So go ahead and pause the video. Okay, so to start this one, it looks simple, but this one we need to pay very close attention when we do all of the multiplications, right? So we're going to take this one, we call it a binomial. First, let's write down one of them. So 2 square root of 6 minus the square root of 3. Now we're going to multiply it by itself, right? That is what the squared means. So we're going to say times, and we'll write down the same one again. 2 square root of 6 minus the square root of 3. Okay, so let's go down here on the next line. And now we'll start the actual multiplication. So this one, again, we need to be careful. So I'm first going to write out all of them, and then we can start to simplify them. So we'll get the first one, 2 square root of 6. 2 square root of 6 times the first one here, 2 square root of 6. Okay, and then we'll say plus, and we'll multiply these two together, right? So 2 square root of 6 times, we want to make sure we pay attention to these minus signs, minus square root of 3, or negative square root of 3. Okay, now the next one, we're going to say, so we're finished with the 2 square root of 6, so we now move on to the minus square root of 3. So we'll say minus square root of 3 times the first one, 2 square root of 6. Okay, and then for the final one, we again have minus square root of 3 times the second one is also minus square root of 3. Okay, so this is all of the terms now. We get 4 different terms. Now we can start to simplify. We can multiply them together. Okay, so we're going to look at them individually, the ones that are outside of the square root and the ones that are inside of the square root. Okay, so first let's look at the ones outside. We have 2 times 2 is 4, right? So we'll have 4 from the first one. And now when we look at the ones inside the square root, we have square root of 6 times square root of 6. So let's write this one down here so we can talk about it together before we simplify it, because we need to remember this one, right? So square root means that we have some number times some number, it will give us 6, right? So if we multiply these two numbers together, we will actually get 6, right? Because this is some number that when we multiply it by itself, we get 6. So we don't know what these numbers are, but if we have 2 of them, we multiply them together, it will give us 6, right? So this is the trick that we're going to use for all of these square roots. If we have square root of 6 times square root of 6, that will just give us 6, right? So when we multiply these two together, it will give us 2 times 2 is 4. Square root 6 times square root 6 will give us 6. So that's the first term we simplified. Then we have plus. We'll do the same thing here. For this one, we only have one thing outside of the square root, so we'll just keep that one, 2. All right. And now for this one, we have square root of 6 times the square root of 3. Okay. So for this one, we can't simplify like this one. We can't cancel them out or anything. So we'll just multiply these two together and put it under the square root. So 6 times 3 is 18, right? So we'll say square root of 18. All right. Now if you'll notice, there's one more thing we need to look at. This one is plus times a minus, right? So what is a plus times a minus? Is a minus. So instead of a plus here, let's write a minus here. So minus 2 square root of 18, right? 6 times 3 gives us the 18. All right, let's move on. We have square root of 3 times 2 square root of 6, right? So again, we only have one thing outside of the square root, so we'll write that one down here. We have 2, and then again we have square root of 3 times square root of, square root of 3 times square root of 6, right? So again, 3 times 6 is 18, so we'll have the square root of 18. And for this one, we have a minus times a plus, right? There's no plus there, but we know it's a plus. So minus times a plus will give us a minus. So again, minus 2 square root of 18. Okay, and then finally, we have minus square root of 3 times minus square root of 3. Okay, so just like the 6's, if we have square root of 3 times square root of 3, what will it give us? It will give us 3. Okay, and then for the sign, right, we have a minus times a minus, that will give us a plus. So we have plus 3. Okay, so now we can continue to simplify these. So we have 4 times 6 is 24. We have minus 2 square root of 18 minus 2 square root of 18, right? So let's look at the coefficient for these. We have minus 2 and minus 2. So then if we just had minus 2 and minus 2, what will that give us? Minus 2 and minus 2 will give us minus 4. So we'll have minus 4 square root of 18, right? We just combine these two together. Minus 2 square root of 18 and minus 2 square root of 18 will give us minus 4 square root of 18. All right, and the final one, plus 3. We can't simplify that one anymore right now. Okay, so let's continue to simplify. 24, let's skip this one for now since it has the square root, but we also have a plus 3. So let's simplify, let's combine these two together. 24 plus 3 is what? Is 27. Okay, and then we still have this one, so let's not forget to write that one down. Minus 4 square root of 18. Okay, so we can see we're getting closer, right? We get 2 of these that have 27 in them, so it's probably going to be one of these two. All right, but let's look at this one again. So to simplify the square root, we need to think of numbers that when we multiply them together they will be equal to 18, and we want them to be a number that is, when we take the square root, it will be a whole number, right? So we think about them, right? 2 times 2, 4, 3 times 3, 9, 5 times 5, 25, 6 times 6, 36, right? These are the types of numbers that we want, so that when we get them, right, we can say square root of 25 is 5, square root of 9 is 3, square root of 4 is 2, right? So any of these numbers, we multiply them by something will give us 18. Which one? Is the 9, right? 9 times what? 9 times 2 will give us 18, right? So let's simplify that one. Let's write it out that way so we can see it better, right? 4 square root, I'll put it in brackets just so that we can remember it, right? So we said 18, this is the same thing as 2 times 9. Okay. So we're almost finished. So we just said the square root of 9 is 3, right? Because 3 times 3 is 9. So that means we will get minus 4 times 3, and then times, we still have this square root of 2, right? The square root of 9 became the 3, so I wrote it down here. We had the 4 times square root of 9 is 3, times, we still have square root of 2. All right, so the final one, we can now simplify these, we can multiply these together. 4 times 3 is what thing? Is 12. So for the final one, 27 minus 12 square root of 2. Alright, so if we look up here, do we see one that's the same? 27 minus 12 times square root of 2. Looks like this one, A. So A is the correct answer. Okay.